Greetings. This video is about love, both the concept and the character. What is love? One definition of love is that love is an emotional attachment, but loving an object is different from loving a person. You can love a song, a movie, a book, a painting. You can love a keepsake, a souvenir, a memento, a piece of clothing, a sweater, for example. You can have feelings about all of those things, but you don't expect those objects to have feelings about you. You have a mind, and that mind finds meaning in those objects, but you know that the objects don't have a mind of their own. You mean nothing to the objects, but the objects mean something to you. The objects bring you a lot of joy, and you feel a lot of sentimental attachment to them. The objects mean a great deal to you, but you mean nothing to them, and you are okay with that. That is one kind of love. But loving a person is different. When you love another person, especially a person that you interact with frequently, you know that the other person has a mind of their own, that the other person has their own thoughts and their own feelings. That makes loving a person a lot more difficult. The other person means something to you, but you also mean something to them. But what you mean to the other person is very different from what you mean to yourself. And what other people mean to you is very different from what those people mean to themselves. And what you mean to the other person is very different from what you think that you mean to the other person. And what the other person means to you is very different from what that person assumes that they mean to you. This is where the difficulty lies. You know that the other person has feelings, but you don't know what they're feeling. You might think that you know, but all that you're really doing is misunderstanding the other person. The other person might believe that they know how you feel, but they don't really know. All that the other person can do is make assumptions about how you must be feeling. You know that the other person has thoughts, but you don't know what they're thinking. You might think that you know what they are thinking, but really, those are just your thoughts. You know that the other person has a mind, or you think that the other person has a mind, but you never really know what is going on inside the other person's mind. You can see the person's face, and you can hear the person's voice, but those things are on the outside. It's the same when the other person is looking at you or listening to you. People can see your face and people can hear your voice, but those things are on the outside. The people in your life can never really know who you are on the inside. No matter how much time people spend with you, all that they can ever know is how you look and sound on the outside. The only part of you that people can perceive is your body. Your mind is imperceptible to everyone except you. People notice things like facial expressions, but facial expressions are nothing more than physical movements. People can notice your gestures and your body language, but those things are physical movements. You can tell people what's on your mind, but everything that you say can be taken the wrong way. Your voice is an extension of your body. The sounds that come out of your mouth are created by the physical movements of your mouth. The words that come out of your mouth are nothing more than vibrations traveling through the air. And when people hear those sounds, people give their own meaning to those sounds. The meaning that your words have for you is different from the meaning that your words have for other people. And by words, I don't just mean individual words, but complete sentences or even long speeches. People's eyes and ears can perceive your body, but not your mind. The 5 senses allow people to perceive the physical, but not the mental or the emotional. For other people to know who you are on the inside, they would need to have a 6th sense, or a 7th sense. Without some form of highly developed extrasensory perception, it is simply impossible for other people to perceive your inner self. And it is impossible for you to perceive the inner self of another person. Other people don't perceive your mind at all. Your thoughts, feelings, and memories don't exist for other people. Your mind doesn't exist for other people, just as their minds don't exist for you. All that people know about each other is whatever is observable on the surface. But your soul, everything that you call I, or me, or myself, is undetectable to other people. People don't really know each other at all. No matter how close you think you are to someone, the two of you are strangers. Even if you live in the same house with another person, that person is a stranger to you, and you are a stranger to them. When you love another person, you don't love the person that they really are, because you don't even know who they are. You love the person that you think they are. When someone loves you, they don't love you for who you are on the inside, because they have never seen who you are on the inside. When someone loves you, they love the person that they think you are. When you love someone, you love your idea of the other person. You love the version of that person that exists in your mind. What you love is an illusion. And it's the same when someone loves you. They can never really love you because they don't even know you. Even your friends and family are confused about your identity. They love the person that they think you are. They love the version of you that exists in their minds. And they have mistaken the real you for the version of you that they know, the version of you that they have made up. Love is a misunderstanding. Love is an illusion. Love is based on the foolish belief that you can actually know another person, or that they can know you. That is one theory, but it's not the only theory. When you realize that other people perceive you differently from how you perceive yourself, it can make you hate other people. When you hate other people, the real reason why you hate other people is simply because they are other people. Other people perceive you differently from how you perceive yourself. The version of you that exists in other people's minds is not the version of you that exists in your mind. And knowing that much can make you feel as if the mere existence of other people is a threat to your existence. When other people perceive you differently from how you perceive yourself, it can make you feel as if your sense of self is being negated by the other person. That's why being misunderstood is so painful. When you realize that the you inside the other person's mind is not you, when you realize that the you that you know is not in the other person's mind, when you realize that the real you is not being recognized at all, when you realize that the only version of you that the other person sees is a false you, then the existence of the other person's perspective is perceived as an existential threat. That is why the deepest desire of the ego is to obliterate the other person's consciousness. That's why you sometimes want to attack someone just for looking at you. Think about it. When someone looks at you, they perceive your body, but they don't perceive your mind. For them, for the other person, your body exists, but your mind doesn't. When you are being observed by other people, you are being reduced to an object. This occurs when you interact with strangers, and it also occurs when you interact with friends and family, because, really, friends and family are strangers, and you are a stranger to them. Other people don't perceive your thoughts, or your feelings, or your memories. Other people don't perceive your mind. All that other people perceive is your body. Other people are reducing you to an object just by being other people. The fact that other people are not you, the fact that other people are not yourself, means that other people will never have any direct experience or any direct knowledge of the you that you know yourself to be. Every time that someone looks at you, every time that someone hears your voice, every time that someone thinks about you, they are reducing you to an object. For other people, they are always the ones doing the observing and the judging, and you are always the thing that is being observed and judged. That is the source of all hatred. You have to hate someone who observes you, judges you, and turns you into an object. On some level, we all know that we are being reduced to an object by other people. Subconsciously, we all know that other people are observing us and judging us without really knowing us. Instinctively, we all know that other people are perceiving our bodies but not perceiving our minds, thereby reducing us to an object. To reduce someone to an object is to deny or negate the existence of the other person's mind. A body without a mind is a corpse. Other people perceive our bodies, but not our minds, and so, in a sense, other people are killing us just by looking at us. Just by being observed, we are being reduced to objects, reduced to bodies. That is why we hate other people. That is the real reason why we hate other people. That is the main reason why we hate other people. It is the primordial separation between self and other that creates all hatred. But what about love? Love is the same thing. Love is just a different kind of hatred. Love and hatred are basically the same thing. Love and hatred are the ways that we cope with the fear of being reduced to an object by other people. We are all afraid of being reduced to an object by the minds of other people. Love and hatred are simply the ways that we deal with that fear. When we sense that we are being reduced to an object by the other person, we sometimes react by wanting to attack the other person, wanting to destroy the other person. If we succeed in obliterating the other person, then the other person can no longer reduce us to an object. But that never works. In the long run, there will always be another person, another enemy, another friend, another stranger, another person to reduce us to an object. Love is the other way that we deal with our fear. When we love someone, we deny that we are being reduced to an object, or we pretend that it doesn't bother us to be reduced to an object. When you love someone, you are trying to get closer to that person in a psychological sense. Love is a failed attempt to bridge the gap between the self and the other. If you manage to bridge the gap between the self and the other, then the fear of being turned into an object is reduced. However, the attempt to bridge the gap between self and other will always fail. Sooner or later, you always realize that you have failed to bridge the gap. A time will always come when you realize that the other person is far away from you, not physically, but mentally and emotionally. There is a distance between you and the person that you love, and that distance can never be traversed. The other person will always be distant simply because they are someone else, another person with another mind. You can never be close to another person because the other person will never know you, and you will never know them. Love is the failed attempt to form a connection between two minds, between two souls. That is why some people go through life forming relationships, ending those relationships, then forming new relationships, then ending those relationships, and then moving on to the next person. People never learn from their mistakes. It is a mistake to think that you can be close to another person. Love itself is a mistake. Love is a denial of reality. Love is a way to run away from fear, the fear of other people. We love other people because we are trying to deny the fact that we are terrified of other people. We are afraid of other people simply because they are other people. Love and hatred are simply the ways that we try to get away from that fear. And it never works. Other people will always be other people, and they will always make us feel uncomfortable. Other people are a source of anxiety. Love and hatred are nothing more than feeble attempts to suppress that anxiety. That is one theory. It is a valid theory, but it is not the only theory. There may be some truth to that theory, but that theory is not the whole truth. Let us consider a different theory. Let us consider that there are genuine connections between people. Let us consider that there really are extra forms of perception that allow us to perceive each other's souls. Let us consider that there might be real ways of bridging the gap between the so-called self and the so-called other. Let us consider that the separateness between the self and the other is an illusion. Let us consider that there is only one consciousness, one awareness. Let us consider that the self is universal, that the self is something shared by all beings. Let us consider non-duality. Let us consider these spiritual ideas. What if there is only one consciousness? What if all of the beings in existence are sharing one single awareness, even though they don't seem to be aware of it? What if, despite appearances, all of the beings in the universe are sharing one spirit? What if oneness is the ultimate reality? What if the separateness between the self and the other is an illusion? What if the self is a singular, eternal, infinite, universal reality that all of the beings in creation have to share? What if there is only one mind? And what if that one mind is simply dreaming that there are many separate minds? What if love is the realization of that oneness? What if love is a force of nature that holds the universe together? What if love is a spiritual power that allows all beings to truly know each other? That way of thinking seems far-fetched. It seems unrealistic. It seems like a fantasy. It seems like a dream. It seems like fiction. It seems like magic. It seems like myth. But really, the only way for people to truly know each other is for magic to exist. The only way for love to be real is for there to be extrasensory perception, for there to be a spiritual connection, for there to be an invisible force linking all of our souls together. The only way to bridge the gap between the self and the other is for there to be something extraordinary, something mystical, something that we might call magic. And in case I'm not being clear about this, what I'm talking about has very little to do with romantic love. The way that I am defining love has almost nothing to do with romance. The kind of love that I would like to believe in is something deeper, something transcendent. We could be talking about the love between two friends, or the love between a parent and a child, or the love between two siblings, or the love between two strangers, or the love between a person and the universe. We could be talking about any kind of love. But for love to be anything other than an illusion, there would need to be real magic. So, do you believe that love is based on illusion? Or do you believe that love is based on reality? The real question is, do you believe in magic? Now, In case you're wondering about the images in the video, those are AI-generated images. Those are images of a character from a novel. The character is called the Goddess of Love. The novel is called Goddess Verse. The Goddess Verse is a universe of goddesses. Goddess Verse is a magical girl novel. The Goddess of Love is a magical girl. She represents the kind of cosmic, universal, transcendent, non-dual, mystical, magical kind of love that I have been hinting at during this video. Although I also believe that the other comments I made about love are valid as well. The idea that love is a coping mechanism that exists in response to social anxiety is also valid. There are many definitions of love. The word love can mean many things. Maybe some forms of love are deep and other forms of love are shallow. Maybe some forms of love are based on a spiritual connection and other forms of love are based on social anxiety. Every theory that I have presented in this video is valid, but no single theory of love can explain all of the different kinds of love that exist. But back to the book. Goddess Verse is a fantasy novel, but there is also a lot of stuff in the book about the nature of reality. It's a very philosophical novel, and the characters have a lot of very deep conversations. If you're interested in fantasy novels, or if you're interested in philosophy, then you should read that book, or any of my other books. Just go to Amazon and search for Goddess Verse or Jean Louis Bell. And on that note, I shall end the video.